We made it back on another revolution. This is Welcome to Breaking Through to Truth, and where the oceans meet the sand and the tides wash away the debris. We're riding on the 33rd parallel around the revolution, and this is Dawnjah and Chelsia Floor giving you the unseen world of voice to balance the perception of humanity and usher in a new paradigm to build upon. So welcome to the first show of 2013, where change is inevitable. So I would like to I'll briefly go over some trends that have been happening in the last 3 years, and to bring the light, the increased probability that these trends may be setting a standard to changes in our lives here on Earth. We have to just be aware of them now and store them in our Rolodex upstairs. So I just wanted to point out some trends. That remember when those blackbirds on December 31st, 2010 fell from the sky in Arkansas? Well, it happened the very next year, December 31st, 2011, on the same exact day. So I had my ears open to see if perhaps they would happen again. And sure enough, the Midwest did get these blackbirds that fell from the sky again. And let me just post some of these in the chat. And also, Arkansas had a blackout of over 100,000 people lost their power. So in losing their power, they still haven't had power. So therefore, 7 days ago, the blackbirds fell in LaBarre, Louisiana, in Kentucky, in Alabama, and Tennessee. And Arkansas still is without power, and they had a huge snowstorm that was unheard of since the 1920s. 1928 was the last snowstorm they had as this nature. So furthermore, for the first time ever, Arctic razorbills, and those are birds that look like penguins, showed up on the coast of Florida 2 days ago on January 4th, 2013. And only 2 birds of this group survived, and they were described as being exhausted, debilitated, and emaciated. Well, these kind of emotions that these birds were going through and the characteristics that they were exhibiting tells me that there was something in the air, so to speak. I was thinking that it was a magnetic field flux or some kind of energy that was bearing down on the earth in that area of the Midwest during December. It seems like December has held many of these trends where the birds fall out of the sky. And so perhaps there is a magnetic field up in space, or the rip in the magnetic field, which is the diameter of the Earth plus a half. So it's about 24,000 miles plus 12. It's about 36,000 miles is the rip, where I read on these science journals of how big it is. But that could be also Planet X exhibiting a powerful nature within our solar system as well. Only further study will be determined to see if we come up with probable answers. But to see the trends is the first place to start, so we could start putting the puzzle together. Other trends that are happening, with all these anomalies that are happening, we have 4 volcano alerts in the Salton Sea. Remember the swarm of EQs down in Southern California and Raleigh last year? Well, those have been related to volcanic disturbances, and these volcanoes have been dormant since 940 BC, which is approximately 3,000 years ago. And Dutch SINS also reported on the coast of California here that Pisgah Crater was emanating steam the last 2 years, and it has picked up back in March of 2012 as well. So it seems like there's adjustments happening on the coast here. Also last year, there was steam vents, and 2 years ago, steam vents being released in Santa Cruz, and San Diego had strange sound, and Temecula had the strange sounds. So there was these anomalies happening that could be related to maybe a crustal movement within a deeper part of the Earth. California also had a 6.3 back in December 13th, I believe it was, 6.3 out in the water off the coast here in the Pacific. And there was also a volcano that was discovered in Baja between Cabo San Lucas and the Mexican mainland. And it was spewing out white powdery material, which is like a silicon base, and that is more prevalent in land masses. So, long ago, the land mass probably was tucked up in there, and that's what's spewing out now in a gray matter, when usually it's like obsidian rock, but they went down there and it's actually a gray type matter. The weather anomalies have been happening to the planet, seem to be more frequent from the months of December to March. So if you want to mark it in your calendar, that December from March seems to when we have the strongest earthquakes, the tectonic movements, the different weather anomalies that are happening. And it stands to reason that since we're 2 million miles closer to the sun during these winter months, that might have a bearing on why this is happening, or it could be Planet X coming in and putting a force onto the structure of our planet. And there's another trend that has happened. Japan has had, remember the earthquake on March 11th in the year 2011. There was a 9.0. Everyone probably remembers that one. And another earthquake that hit March 14th, 2012 was the 6.8. So in March, it seems to appear that Japan has these huge movements. And I was just wondering if perhaps this March might be the same, or just gear up, because it seems like it's a pattern that's been happening the last 3 years. Oh, this would be the third year for it. And also the sunrise in Greenland, January 13th. Let's take note of that. It's supposed to rise every January 13th, but in 2011, it appeared 2 days early on January 11th, which made our cycle 268 miles off course for that period of time. And so it appears like maybe location does matter for various parts of the Earth. In the Northern Hemisphere, the Midwest gets blasted by some kind of magnetic disturbance in December, and Japan EQs are happening in March. And the weather patterns seem to be extreme as we encounter varying energy fields as we enter new places in our galaxy. Well, David Sarita has research that says that we are located now 10 parsecs above the Milky Way galaxy, and this is the first time human beings have existed on this part of the arm of the galaxy. So, like we talked about before, always adjusting and making adjustments for new ways of being, new ways of thinking, clearing the debris out to make room for the new. So our consciousnesses are directly related to what we've been going through here. So I wanted to get this these articles here, but it's too difficult. Chelsia, what do you think about the different trends that are happening?
Well, I think, we as a species here on the planet in our so-called evolutionary progress are doing exactly what the ancients used to do. And what we're doing is we're watching, observing, cataloging, and finding what these trends are. Are they short-term trends? Are they long-term trends? What do we have in common on a yearly basis to make these things happen? And maybe there are larger bodies out there, whether it's certain alignments with the larger gas giants and planets in our solar system that could have some bearing on it. We're looking at a variable amount of orbital mechanics out there. But the main thing to think about is we're a spinning magnet. We're moving 1,000 miles an hour. Solar system is moving, all these astronomical numbers out there. We're moving around the sun 150 million miles per second.
That's incredible.
It is. And Alcyon is towing us. And then, the galaxy is moving 370 million miles per second. So it's an astronomical amount of speed and distance that, are creating the spinning magnets out there that all have an effect on each other. So, our solar system alone, we are awaiting the coming of this little mini solar system of Nibiru, Wormwood, Planet X, whatever you want to call it. And supposedly it had passed through the northern hemisphere back in September 26th and should be apparently visible in the sky pretty soon. So there are a lot of amateur astronomers out there that are awaiting this, and some of them have photographed it, and that very well could be, if it is a small solar system, it has to have a form of a sun, whether the sun has gone through its whole collapsing. It's got to be a pretty dense magnet then with a very strong pull that there's reasons that the ancients called it the destroyer. So every time it comes, every 3,600, maybe another 30 or 60 years, whatever that calculation may be, we're awaiting its effects on us. So again, all these spinning magnets have a relationship to each other.
Do you feel like we're getting effects from this now? Like in our daily activities? I feel like sometimes the dream world seems to be overlapping our conscious state at times. People can perceive things in many different ways. Like people could be divided into ways of perception of how they see things, how they see incidences happen, depending on where their way of being is. Or, I was going to say where their resonance field is resonating, basically.
Well, I think what is also happening is all the questions that you and I have, we have our dialogues about, and we're out there gathering information to try to give us awareness so that we have some kind of common sense to make a judgment about what's going on without having the absolute proof coming from the sources of our senses out there. We're awaiting Nibiru to make its arrival in the sky that we can see with the naked eye. That would be absolute proof. Mm-hmm. What now? Yeah. We have to trust the telescopes that are infrared in their measuring of a certain type of heat coming off of this mini solar system, and apparently it is there.
Well, I'm going to pop a question here to you. Where do you feel Nibiru was March 12th, 2012?
Well, according to the now remember this, they were awaiting it breaking through from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere. They calculated it to be in September. So, our government, along with several other governments, have built these great infrared.
So breaking through our solar system,
the plane.
The plane, right. Was it coming down from the north or up from the south?
Up from the south.
Up from the south, breaking through on what side of?
Up near.
Through Saturn?
Near Saturn, yes. Near Saturn's orbit, but not necessarily close to Saturn, the planet. Now remember, everything has to do with positioning.
Right. And so what I'm getting at is that there is a magnetic field diagram that came out during that day, and it was taped. And Suspicious Observer was able to collect it and put it on his server. It's a very interesting clip. And another group was able to grab that clip as well. Right after that happened, the whole server net went down. It was called NICT that we use in Japan, and it's called the NICT. And this whole server went down, so we cannot get the readings for the magnetic fluxes that are happening to the planet. So thanks to Suspicious Observer, he found another site. Let me put that site on there for everyone who wants to do it, because it took me a long time to find that. And if you want to check the magnetic field on a daily basis, you can come to this site and put it in there. For example, January 3rd, I was feeling very sick for an odd reason. And when that comes on like that, I feel like, well, I think the magnetic field lines are flexing back and forth. So I go to check on the reading, and sure enough, it is. And that the very, very next day, that's when the Arctic birds showed up on the coast of Naples, Florida, which is very interesting because those birds have never come there that far south before. Plus, they were in a warm environment. So I was trying to put this picture together, whether this planet X or some other kind of anomaly was acting upon the Earth on the opposite side of the sun. It was on the dark side of the sun. So with the ephemeris there, I don't know if we can actually figure that out. right now, but Chelsea's wit and character, I'm sure she might be able to find it real quick.
Well,
But
first of all, let me just say there is no dark side of the sun, but it be facing away from us towards
right. Well,
other
I'm
planets.
talking about there's a two-dimensional model that we're looking at here,
Yeah.
and that's the spacing of it.
But it could be aimed towards other planets that are reflecting their light back on us. Now, when we look into the heavens, in the night sky, the great visible Jupiter, we've been watching its transit in the constellation very close to the horns of Taurus, the bull. We've been watching that all year as it's moving, and it takes 1 year to move 30 degrees. And takes 12 years for it to go all the way around the sun. And so it's in opposition to where the sun is right now, pretty much. Not exactly 180 degrees, but far enough away. So if the sun is aiming its sunlight in these highly magnetic fields and particle streams that are reaching out, remember the distance that it sends, sunlight itself only takes 8 seconds to get here, but the particle stream could take 3 days. And so there is a measurable distance of a couple of days when these particular events could occur because the particle stream is highly magnetized as well. So my point is, if it's aimed at Jupiter, Jupiter is aiming its light back at us. This is just nothing but a cosmic billiard game that's going on out there. And we are children observing all this, trying to make heads or tails out of watching these occurrences happen to see what happens next so that we can make our assumptions based upon a cycle of some sort.
Right. And noticing these patterns and writing them down. I have a list that goes back to 2000, and I've been noticing the big things that happen, like the storms on Saturn. In fact, when we have these anomalies happening with the birds, storms on Saturn erupt in December as well. Well, this one particularly happened November 28th, which is the very beginning of December, a huge storm on Saturn. And every time I go to post something in the chat, I lose the chat. So I got to be able to do that a little bit better.
Well, the correlation I'm making is when it's not directed at us, it may very well be pulled by the gas giants out there away from us.
If you put the link in the chat here, I'll post it, or in the Skype, I'll post it for you.
Oh, wow. Okay, that would be easier for me. Okay, thank you.
And so, these, great gas giants out there, our big brothers and sister planets, are pulling it away from us, or just, we can say it's the happenstance or, the chance that it's not aimed at us. And we've been pretty lucky that we haven't had major X flares aimed at us at such a great intensity to have taken down the grids and knocked out the satellites for communications. But it's not, again, you hear this often, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because we are now reaching that solar maximus for this 11-year sunspot cycle. And it's very intense. And if we have other things happening in the mix of the orbital mechanics, such as the great magnet of the sun of Nibiru, then this is like a big, big event that we're all going to be witnessing. And it's a grand time to be exploring the heavens and to be marking down these patterns, because with that comes a consciousness shift.
Yes.
And that's the main thing. If we are experiencing these things, then we have to expect that we're going to adapt to it to some way, because our main goal as human beings here is survival of the species. And we want the best of consciousness to be the leaders here. And so it is a matter of maintaining balance and not to get into this doom and gloom type of scenario out there, but to be prepared somewhat. And preparation is always first in consciousness and second in your physical needs.
Well, yeah, that's how I run my life. I don't know, but actually, yes, we are coming upon a change. I see in businesses that we really have to do business through the heart, because the money aspect of our whole existence here is not working. It's not in balance. We spend way too much money for rent and not enough hours for jobs. The whole balance I think it is inevitable that it's going to change and rebalance itself.
It has to. The money systems here on the planet, remember, the same families that are in charge of the global corporations and the international banksters out there are the same families that created the international banking. You could trace back to the times of Christ. And even at that time, there has been some, amazing data correlating these same families' bloodlines all the way to the kings and queens and presidents of all of the major, countries out there that are in power. And so it's just they are using different conflicts that they create, such as war and all these different civil types of events out there.
So yes, let's get to the civil events. It's interesting that the Arab Spring started up in January too, when I believe that these magnetic fluxes will, further research will determine an answer. But the trend that's happening is that in December, the Arab Spring happened in December as well, 2010, which is when magnetic anomalies started happening, birds falling from the sky and fish dying in the waters and many things happening here.
Well, consciousness can be slightly discombobulated during these magnetic storms. But if you ask me what the whole Arab Spring with Egypt was all about, it was all about a ruse to take whatever they wanted out of the Cairo Museum that has been hidden. Just like we have the Smithsonian basement and the Louvre has their basement and the Vatican has their basement, there's a lot of extraterrestrial data in the form of elongated skulls and things coming from, the ancient history of Egypt that says, they're star-seeded. And they knew it, and their astronomical data was because they were being told most of this information from an off-planet base.
Well, and it's interesting to me that they grabbed skulls. What are in those skulls that they would want?
DNA.
That's what I thought too.
It's all the DNA that proves that there is.
So then that gets me to think, okay, did they mummify these bodies because they knew in the future that they would have replicating DNA tools to revive the genetic code and perhaps, make a whole nother person out of cloning or some type of genetic manipulation or
I think
creation.
If you are a species that is advanced to the point of being able to do that, you cover all your bases. And if you physically cannot live your 1,000-year reign, to some species, the Adamic race at one time lived to be 900 to 1,000 years. And then eventually, we're down to 1/10 of that. If we live to be 70 to 100 years, that's the expectancy. But that could all change because what happens when you recode your DNA, certain things come alive again that were, hidden and dormant for a while. And so when you recode it, you can bring back some of the original unused DNA. And there's a lot to be said about what is junk DNA.
Yes.
Junk DNA is the Akashic record of your physical, beingness through your many, I'd say, grandmothers and grandfathers. If you want to look at it from the Native American point of view, you contain the genetic code of your race and its memory here on the planet. And so we're constantly upgrading our genetic code with every experience we have. And if you are constantly in, I would say, the mindset to be experiencing and expressing and learning, then you are changing your own genetic code as we speak.
Right. So the next step for this would probably be to get a globe and put some pen marks on it and see what we come up with and put the whole solar system into an arrangement where we can actually understand it and see what is tilting where, what kind of reflections are we getting where, because it would be, if we had a planetary influence, it would be that north pole of that planetary object that would be pulling in the south pole of another one, right? How magnetics work. Or there could be just a total flux of energy and maybe I would think more of a probability that the opposite poles would be attracting.
Okay, well, it's a funny thing because I have thought about that exact thing that you're talking about. How and when and why is there such a thing called pole shifting? What is it as a phenomena or orbital mechanics out there that could possibly create this? And I don't believe that it has absolutely everything to do with the precession of the equinox as an ongoing 26,000 year event, because, dendrochronology and ice core boring says differently, that it's not all of that sequential to go with the precession of the equinox. But the other effect that I look at is what has been said is that every 4 or 5 times that the mini solar system of Nibiru passes, the planet, Earth is not in the proper location to avoid certain circumstantial electromagnetic conditioning out there. Now, when that happens, we have a magnetic anomaly if we're in the wrong place, wrong time. And this very well could be the moment of its expression as it enters into the northern hemisphere of our solar system to be affecting us as we spin into our equinox. We're talking about this particular quarter from December 21st, the solstice, into the equinox, which is in March.
March 22nd this year, or somewhere around there.
Yep. And this is when the greatest effect of our particular location is going to be in a geometrical alignment with this. And so, it's all about the geometries and placement of this great billiard game that's being played in this cosmic alignment system out there. It's all the orbital mechanics are measured geometrically.
Well, if we are closer to the sun during this period of winter, we're approximately 2 million. Well, this is Breaking Through to Truth, and you know that we are a privately funded radio station, and we really honor your support if you can give $5 or $20, and we could put that link, make it real easy for you. You just click on the button and put your information in, or we could bring you 24/7 information from around the world. It's really worth it to chip in a little. That makes it all worth it for everyone. So then we can stay together in this time of change that is before us, because it is inevitable. The whole country is going through many emergency documents to basically, when you're in an emergency document situation, the Constitution becomes secondary, because those become the forefront of moving things. And there's 600 of those in the last 2 months. So we have to be aware of what's going on around us and what's going on around us on the Earth, as well as in the solar system, and what kind of forces could be acting upon us to basically, in this time of evolution. This is the moment of evolution. We've probably come here from many miles away to experience this, and we're just bringing it in different forms, from the ancient text to science to Keys of Enoch and various other modalities of knowing that there is a change upon us. And all of us are able to do it because you wouldn't be here if you couldn't. So it's all for our benefit. Change is good. So we were talking about the different cycles of planetary movements. Chels?
Well, and it's also about, let's look at the cycles of humanity here. If you want to call them root races, you want to call them, the Hopi say that we're entering into the 5th new race of man. According to some, we've actually entering into the 6th, because the original race here was that of a light body, not of a physical form. And that has to do with, the angelic race that came here from Lyra. And, they are guardianship here. And also think in terms of the different star seeds here that helped humanity in its many different placements during the Lemurian and the Atlantean records here. But the important thing now is, okay, we're coming from looking at ancient history. And if you want to call it the Atlantean era, because it wasn't just an island, it was an era of high technological advances, just like we're doing in our present last 100 years. We've made so many advances. to only find out that we're still children in this playground.
Well, where exactly was that continent located?
Well, it was an era, and it was a global phenomena of a time period. And yes, there were many islands together with maybe one major island that had a volcano on it, and they call that Mount Meru, according to the different records out there. But yes, it was in the Atlantic Ocean. And part of it was where the Bermuda Triangle is. And, it's hard to say without looking at ancient records. We're looking at from one perspective of people writing the record. The other part is looking at ancient relics that are unearthing civilizations that go back 12,000 years.
Well, did they say anything in these records that if Atlantis was going to form again or re-arise? Did it say anything like that?
Well, let's look at it from a spiritual point of view. Spiritually, they talk about 10 kings of Atlantis. They were had equal distribution of rulership over this, but not all were in accordance to certain records. Not all of them were harmoniously working together. But there was a couple of these kings that wanted to have complete rulership over it, and they were saying that part of that is coming from a Luciferian, if you want to call it that, a Luciferian movement that may have come from the planet Mars and may have come from a draconian lineage. Now, if you want to look at history of the galactic seeding here, at least in our
maybe
local
it could have
galaxy,
been an experiment to see if they can run it without, with their own control.
But what's happening today is the particular bloodlines from these original 10 kings, they feel that they own us and they are rulers of this planet, and they want to take over and have been taking over not only just the banking systems, but the money and the power and the control in a global way. And everybody else is just supporting the pyramid of those 10 families. Mm-hmm. And they kept all this history very secret. It's easy to dumb down the population out there, give them entertainment.
Let us work for them.
Right. Give them
Where does
entertainment.
your money really go to when you
Put
pay your bills?
fluoride in the water. Do all these things to keep them busy and keep them dumb and stupid, and hide all of the artifacts.
Well, that's what they're doing now in Chelsia. The place where Diane used to live in England. They have this huge building museum, and they're putting all the paintings down in the bottom basement. Well, yeah. Why are they preparing for that? And why are they preparing with the seed vault? So do they know something that we should know that we don't think we know? Or is there really something happening here and they're trying to get the last dollar from us before this change happens?
Well, it's also been stated that all of the money that, these particular global corporations have made off of the backs of, the billions of people supporting them has been for them to build their undergrounds in case of emergency, in case of, the oncoming planet. And we're not really sure how this will play out as far as an electromagnetic storm out there that could create pole shifts and create, winds of 1,000 miles an hour. And what's it going to do to the grid of communication on this planet? And the banking systems will all go down, but who's going to be saved? They have, look at the stones in Arkansas and Georgia. The Georgia stones that tell us that only so many millions of people are going to survive, and they already know who these people are going to be.
Well, yeah, who knows about that truth about it, Well, they don't know what's going to happen either. I believe that they don't know.
Their intentions are strong, but I like to look at some biblical records, like the words, "The meek will inherit the earth." It's going to come down to, if you choose to be a survivor in this oncoming game out there of, what it is, it's global conditioning based upon many factors, not only the consciousness here on this planet, but the orbital mechanics of what happens and occurs periodically. And we have to, I'd say, have in our awareness many things. Educate yourself. prepare. Consciousness has its place here. If you think that you are conditioned enough to be a survivor, and then you will. But spiritually, is your soul ready to give up its body and be ready to take on a new genetic code? Because we don't know what that genetic code will be, who's going to survive.
And, that brings to mind my dream. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I had a dream about a tidal wave engulfing the car, and Chelsia was sitting next to me in the car, and I had a little cat on my lap. I came over to her house and told her about my dream, and she tells me about a dream she had last night, and I was in her dream, and it dealt with a tidal wave too. I found that very fascinating to where, wow, what does that mean? Well, for me, the dream meant, since we survived it in the end, it doesn't matter what you go through. It may be turbulent, it may be scary, but you're going to make it in the end. But I think we're on the razor's edge, and we're not gonna go away. We have the tools to, in the moment of time, to make this happen, and we have to know that. Everything does come down to belief. It comes down to the rules of the unseen world and how it all fits together. And your belief has a lot to do with it. I think that's why the whole frequency control game is here, putting a dome around us so we can't think outside of the box, or we think, oh, that's too hokey pokey, or, that's not concrete. But your thoughts, look at everything that's invented on the planet. Their thoughts came first before they made that happen. It's the thought and the energy of the thought that really has a forming ability. They've even proven that on quantum physics level, that thoughts are the things that permeate the fields. Neutrinos are high level, faster than speed of light particles, and they go through the dense layer of matter to form the building blocks of the foundations of what your thoughts are, because they follow through with it. It sounds, but that's what we learn now on this level of humanity. We're not hunter-gatherers so much, but we're like thinkers. We're in the upper cortex of our brain, the one that connects to the source of all things. But we also realize that the heart is actually 5,000 more times magnetic than the brain, and the heart is also 100 times more electric than the brain on regular meters of measurement. Therefore, it is probably to our best interest for everyone to get in a heart space when you deal with regular situations around your daily life. It really does and will have a difference in the course and change of the direction that we go. I believe that is a catalyst that we should learn from this, because we already did the brain area. We could still work on that, but not go crazy wild like everything has to cost. And anyways, there's a balance with all things. Nature does balance in many ways. So we need to bring that heart up to surface, sort of like the balance of the Aquarian age is the masculine and feminine balance. We're not in a patriarch anymore. Let's let the matriarch take a place to make a balance with the duality of all things, whether it's black or white or male or female or decision making, and just know that we're all humans on this planet, and don't let the powers that be, so to speak, separate us with situations and issues of race, color, or different belief structures.
Because they can.
Yeah, well, they program that day and night on the television to try to make you feel like that is really going on. Who knows what's going on with that, but there is a manipulation process seems to be going on.
And that's, been ongoing because they can. And because they have dumbed us down as a whole, at least in our country, the dumbing down processes have been through the entertainment system, have loaded the grid with doom and gloom, have, allowed us to give away our power, basically, based upon fear. The fear of anything out there that they want to create in a process of, oh, now we have to give up our guns because we don't know how to govern ourselves. We need Big Daddy out there to govern us and to, and we ask for it. And as a whole, we're pretty stupid, in a lot of ways, as far as like looking at the total population of the planet. We've given away our power based upon vote, so to speak, and I would say the higher consciousness of this plane needs to be a little bit more functioning as a whole.
Well, that's how we grew up. We grew up with the science-based nature where everything was measurable, weighable, and countable. So only tangible characteristics are taken into account with our scientific method. That's why this spectrum is broadening. We're not only in this small visible light spectrum now, it's widening to where it's encompassing more of the energies of all the way from radiation to gamma to microwave to radio. We are increasing our ability to see. In fact, there was a German scientist that actually calculated that our auric fields can penetrate this dimension that we're in, and it actually goes to other fields of vibration. So our feeling centers, like we said before, the heart can actually penetrate these fields and be measurable in other fields.
Well, look at who we are as a single unit to the whole, okay? You know, it's often been said that we are a single cell to the whole humanity body out there. But as a single unit, our heart is the center of, like 12 around 1, of our Merkaba. Our physical vehicle has not only just physicality, we have our light bodies that surround us that we call our auric egg, and we have containment of all these circles of light that as we begin in consciousness to ascertain use of this superluminal properties of light coming from not only center of the galaxy, but our sun in itself. Well, let's talk about, I mean, we had discussions earlier about what is a superluminal property.
Right.
And
superluminal goes through the barriers that protons can't get through sometimes.
Well, what it is, it's for the most part, it is
neutrinos.
It's a sea of light out there that not necessarily travels, but has been called as a wave that's faster than a proton. So in other words, you know, the wave is excited. You know, here is a duality principle. Is it a particle? Is it a wave? Now, according to the ancients, light is. But light excites the wave, so it appears to be moving. And we measure this movement of the wave, like the sun, you know, gives its light and it takes 8 seconds to get here. A superluminal property just is. It's constantly in its own particular environment all the time. It's just a matter of, do you have the hardware to receive?
Well, then that comes to mind what the Bible says, what Jesus says. He says, if thine eye be single, thine eye, he's talking about one eye, the third eye, says, let thy whole body be light. That's a very interesting little tidbit of information to, you know, let you see from the third eye and your whole body becomes light. So there are little places where we can get information and put it together with what's going on.
And it is about activating the centers to be able to receive. And the word activation is the most important part of that third eye. I mean, it takes a certain activation of chemistry that we already have. And we talk about DMT, we talk about all of these glandular secretions based upon, you know, the third eye, the pineal and the pituitary creating a new crystalline matrix in this brain. And so in order for us to have the ability, like a radio receiver, the brain is an organ, we need to be secreting this new chemistry.
I believe it's our emotional body that secretes that. And when we're hooked up and we have that vibration of emotion of just awe, this feeling of, actually it could reach like the orgasmic level of, that's why they've done experiments with, different people's unions and things. Anyways, I don't want to get into that part of it, but it is an emotional secretion. Our emotions secrete it. I know that for sure.
It is what I would call a higher sense of love, not a physical love.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about.
It's being able to lose the lower emotions that hold you back.
You know, and it comes if you go to a sacred site or out in nature. The sacred sites really do it. You look at all the awe, like Rebecca was talking on her show of how fascinating it was to see Egypt. I really wish I can go to Egypt and see those huge, statues and how they perhaps did it. But that sense of awe really turns something on inside you to where you get all these sparks happening and communication, or people get different connections in different ways. But that emotional, connection is one that is a pathway.
Well, I like to look at it as these sacred sites have memory. And as you immerse your physical body into the Akashic field of these sacred sites, something is awakened in your own genetic junk memory, of you having been there before in a previous body. And with that comes, your whole connection to a greater memory of the planet.
That could be the connection with your overself, your oversoul that was perhaps there. It's an energetic form, and just the memory of all of that. Symbols appear in the stone itself, just out of nowhere. And it's like a wave between you and what your other body's experiencing, and these information come out of nowhere.
It is your ability, as you awaken, to tap into the Akashic record of the planet of previous lifetimes that you have had here. And when you're able to see the Akashic memory for yourself, what's important to you. Everybody has a different way of tapping into Akashic records here. Your own physical bodies, and I'm saying bodies through many different oversouls here, have experienced many things.
And it is through that vibration. We can connect through a vibration, because vibration penetrates all fields. And if you feel, like when we have dreams, for example, you can feel the emotions behind the incidences that are taking place in that dream. And that's what makes it real for that particular place and time, is the emotional awareness of it. And also the body voltage comes into play as well. In order for like a physical organism to survive, its energy has to be at a certain level matching the energy outside itself, or a dichotomy, an imbalance can arise. But being able to be adjusting and be flexible to these various fields that are coming through, I think that's a thing that we should be aware of.
Well, the denseness of the physical body right now, we're dense. We have a physical form that we feel entrapped by our physical form. To be outside of the physical domain, whether you can reach it during dream time, reach it during meditation, what we're doing is we're releasing the physical form, and we're into our light body Merkabas, and able to look at what is happening from a different perception, and we're able to use that information in our physical body. So here we have this dichotomy of sleeping. During the time we're asleep, we're really awake. During the time we're awake, we're really asleep.
Like row your boat, right?
Yeah, and that's true. A funny thing, because us as humanity goes through this dichotomy all the time.
And that's why they set up this world like this, thinking that we think that this is real. And perhaps it's the dreamtime world. And like, if you thought of yourself as a hunter-gatherer or something, camping all the time, you would be able to connect with nature on different levels. Start whistling a tune and all the birds come. Why are they communicating with you? Well, they're singing a song with you.
Well, just remember, half the planet is asleep right now. So, I'm saying that.
Well, I know it's different energies.
Ways. Yeah.
Yes, they're in dream time. We're awake.
But you can tap into their dreams. You can communicate to people that are in their sleeping mode right now. And, they're actually flooding the morphogenetic grid of thought right now with their dream time. And, often people are very creative in their dream time. I, for one, if I have something I need to work out, I work it out in my dream time. And by the time I reach my waking state, it's already, a done deal. So I'm easily, being able to ascertain that information as if it's already done. And that's how I look at my future, is it's already done. And it's the same with inventors out there and how we load the grid. It's out there somewhere, and if you connect to it, and that's why certain inventions are capable of being done simultaneously at different locations on the planet. And, the 100th monkey effect proves that as well.
Well, with the 100th monkey effect, Greg Braden talks about that and what the population should be to create enough energy for that field to manifest. However, quantity, I think quantity is not necessarily an issue. It could be quality that would be a better characteristic of describing what the 100th monkey theory is. Because I would think that it has to do with vibratory field. And like you were saying, when you crunch the numbers of Buckminster-Fuller's numbers, the next grid on our subatomic periodic table would be 162 elements. Well, that corresponds to energy, to a vibratory field, to make it a foundation so the building blocks could be formed to grow upon.
Yeah, and we talk about, okay, fifth dimensional experience, but we don't often talk about the different density grids. And a density grid has to do with the layering frequencies of the atomic periodic table. The next density grid is 162 elements by which we as a creative force can use to create with. So density grids versus dimensional grids are two separate aspects of the next experience that we as spiritual physical beings might be.
Okay, you're back with us again. This is Chelsia and Dawnjah with Breaking Through to Truth. And we wanted to just remind everybody, if they have $5 or $20, they can feel free to drop some coins. If they'd like to change, they can drop some change into our bucket. And that's at freedomslips.com/support. And there is a support page on the main page of freedomslips.com, if you didn't know what direction the slash went. So we're talking about different fields of consciousness, just various energetic environments and things. And we wanted to also point out that we as people can tune in our consciousness to any place we want to. It's our choice. It's our freedom. We can be concerned about anything we want to be concerned about. And it's our free will to do. So we can nourish the light within ourselves so the world fixes itself. Now that may be a big plan or a dreamer's way of looking at things, but it is possible if it went around the world and everyone did that in line at the grocery store or whatever it may take. We can make the changes that we seek. So, Chelsia, you were talking about the density grids and how we perhaps adjust to them, or we could feel when that adjustment needs to take place, and they're at various levels of attachment.
Well, let's look at us as these consciousness, thinking, feeling, sentient beings. We're pilots. We're pilots on this great mothership Earth that's moving through like a corkscrew around Alcyon, around Sirius, around the great spiral arms of the center of our galaxy.
Yeah, why are we here?
Yeah, all of these big questions that if you are alive and you are conscious and sentient, you're going to ask at one point in your life, what's the meaning to all of this? And it is about evolving.
Especially when you find out that it's not necessarily working for... I mean, yeah, it's nice to have a job and work and have money and put it back. But in the all, when you think about that whole circle, where does the money go back to? It goes back to the banks and starts all over again. And then it's reissued. And it's just like, what is that for? So we can survive? Well, why can't we survive on our own and raise a farm and do our own food? And
well, that is the reality that we're looking to change. That's like, we call that third density reality, We're looking to make it into a higher consciousness civilization.
So you know what I think that change would take is for us to make the free energy devices. They just have to come about and
but they're already here. They're just not allowed to be implemented. Every time somebody comes up with a patent, that patent is bought out.
Sure.
And so, buying out these patents have led to, unfortunately, just putting a cloud over humanity to some degree where, we're not allowed to utilize these great things. Tesla was such a mind. And he put into the reality grid, these many different inventions that, were picked up by Marconi and Edison. And then, the great minds of the day have taken them into, further inventions for the betterment of mankind. And unfortunately, we take, the power mongers out there, said, oh, okay, let's set up this whole electric grid where we can charge people.
Right. Well, that's why Edison got the did, because he was willing to charge, and Tesla was more of a humanitarian. And, this is the story I heard. So, it stands to reason that that's what it was, because his character was of a higher stature. He knew he came here to the earth to give some benefits. So think about life from that perspective. If the electricity was freely given, he stuck light bulbs in the earth and they went on. And just because of his point of insertion, I guess. I didn't read that part, but...
Well, the Tesla coil was one that extrapolated energy directly out of, what I would call not necessarily the ethers, but this whole electromagnetic atmosphere in the grid of the planet has ways of tapping into it so that, like antennas, you take the Great Pyramid as an antenna that brings in a certain amount of cosmic radiation, as well as electromagnetic force fields out there and harnessed into the geometry of that planet.
Well, even the Russians, they have Tesla coils underground, and you could see them from space. The Google Earth, well, that's what I heard, but I didn't look at it myself. But it's giant Tesla coils in Russia that they're experimenting with.
And those Tesla coils that are, if the Russians have it and we know about it, know that China has it, know that all the big powers all over the planet.
So do you think they're getting prepared for if the grid ever went down, or could that reboot?
Let's say this. You have most of the money of the planet being filtered through a tiny little country in the Middle East that we'll call Israel. And the question was proposed to the Israelis. If the grid went down, how soon could you get your grid back up? And they said, easy. In a matter of 3 days, the whole country could be running again. But you know what? If they have that technology, how come we're not implementing that technology here? There must be some kind of divisive, plan to, create martial law or something of that nature to get people
to make us think that we need them.
We need them, exactly.
And that's what the buffalo told me years ago, not to be dependent, because then they can inflict sorrow. They can control what you get, what you eat, and everything from the very nth degree. So yeah, to be sustainable and independent is probably the way we need to go to further our experience of freedom.
Well, it's a funny thing. And the reason why I say it's funny, because we as we wake up, we have to laugh at ourselves for being fooled all this time.
Well, what could we do about it? Even now I've noticed our votes are changeable. We voted, the mass people voted for certain things in California, and it was switched on us. And then, there's been various issues throughout that have just been switched around. And I've always questioned, well, we just voted for that. How could they change it around? They take it for another vote.
That's right. The lawmakers of this country, which are there 545 that make up the Congress and the Senate and, the Assembly.
One by one.
They're all bought and paid for by the lobbyists out there. They're all afraid to move. And partially it's because there's dirt dug up on every one of them. Yeah. That if they were to step outside the box.
Yeah, so look at their consciousness. Now, if they look at, that's why I say it's the game of the light and undeveloped light. So these people are all stuck in a game, in an ego game, in a I don't want myself to be revealed. Well, that's the easiest way to get over your stuff.
But not all of them are like that. But the ones that are a little outside that kind of,
Well, what I'm saying is that they're in a particular area in life where they will get the biggest lesson if they just allow and let go of their issues to really be an ambassador for what is right. And regardless of what the pressure is on the outside, that is the test for them. And they may have a bigger test than, say, me sitting here, but they have a test of spirit will, of what they want to create for a planet.
It's all going to come down to not becoming polarized with the judgment of it going one way or the other, but to stand firm within your own vibration of love. Because, if you become them by judging them, then you're just stuck in the polarity again.
Absolutely. And we've talked about that before, that when you judge something, you're stuck there until you're working that out to know that, well, just let it go. And so that's why we here at Revolution Radio are carving a new pathway. We're walking in a direction that takes a little from here and a little from here and a lot from here and a lot from here, and making it into a new way of seeing and perceiving the world from a consciousness viewpoint instead of a monetary viewpoint. It's the monetary viewpoint that will inevitably change. It may change to barter and trade. That's probably why they put the new law in about no bartering, no trading in some places.
Well, they want to tax it. They consider bartering and trading like that a form of income. And if you don't report your income, You know, you owe the IRS something. You know, that's been said before about people that have garage sales. They want them to report it as income and tax them again, when all those items have already been taxed already.
Yeah, it's a double tax. So wouldn't that be a conflict of interest?
Yeah,
I mean,
you would say.
Bring it up in court like that. And so, and the court system seems to be changing too.
There is no real court system out there that isn't maritime law.
Right, you were born in water, therefore you are under maritime law.
Anytime you see a flag with a gold fringe on it, know that you are not sitting in front of a judge who took an oath. You're sitting in front of a banker who is just about taking money from one side and giving it to the other, no matter what that'll be. That's why everything, even a traffic court, is considered just money being traded. It's about charging you a fee for something, and it's all about money coming into the system somehow.
Well, that's why when I went to traffic court, my name was on the paper to go into the court, and it actually said criminal court on there. And I was wondering why, but when I got into the court, the judge said, "You may have seen that it says criminal court up there." So he went to explain it. So it is changing. There's changes all around us, and we just have to be aware of what it is.
But we have to be also, how do you change that system? It's very difficult when they got you from the time you're born. When you see your name in capital letters, all capitals, like on your license and your birth certificate and things of that nature, they're making you into a corporate person rather than a natural person. And so, that's the difference right there.
So basically what it comes down to, I think the utmost importance of us here on this planet is basically to maintain our own vibration and to work on ourselves so we can vibrate out of the heavinesses that will come along and challenge us.
And it's nice to be aware of all the ongoing crap that's out there.
Yeah.
But that's not where you should be spending your conscious time. You should be co-creating with the universe for what's next, what's next for mankind, what's next for humanity.
And then you have to bring it in the tangible form too, so we can actually make a forward movement here on this planet, so we don't end up leaving before we finish what we have to come for. It's about maintaining a foundation, and perhaps maybe the children are involved, but that seems like a big task, so I'm just going to throw that out there again.
Well, it is about what is truth.
Right.
We always have talked about truth is three things. There's a personal truth, there's a relative truth that you share with people, and then there's a mutable truth. The only one that won't change is a mutable truth. The others are just relative to whatever they want to put out there and is believable at the moment. So, if we're breaking through to truth here, which is the name of the show, then we need to know what's real. And we are so easily fooled. And so, when you stand in your own personal truth and look to find what's higher, as far as the immutable higher truth, then that's what we should be focused on.
So every situation will dictate a choice, and that choice that you take will dictate the path.
Yeah, and it's always going to be the difficult one is to stay outside of duality, because everywhere you turn, they're looking to polarize you into one particular opinion, one way or another. And, unfortunately, that's been the course of mankind over the last 12,000 years. We've passed the darkest time for mankind, and we've entered into the new age of Aquarius, where, as we have seen the last 100 years, we've made some great technological advances here, but we're still realizing that we're children when it comes to that particular advancements there. I mean, we need to implement the free energy. We need to implement what we know, which science knows and is not ready to reveal because they can't make money on it. And, if you think...
Or they'll give all the money away if they did reveal it.
Well, the thing is, you're not given grants. If you are, coming from the educational system and you want to study something that is not within their particular paradigm, you won't be given a grant to do that.
Right. So everything.
There's control factors.
There's control factors.
But that's why we have amateur astronomers out there.
Absolutely.
And the most of the comets that are being discovered are discovered by amateur astronomers. And so they're the ones that are really doing work out there.
So keep on studying, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's bring it here to the table.
Make your contribution in consciousness by just being aware and staying alive. Be on top of the new paradigm because you're a co-creator with what that paradigm is. And, everybody is a contributor here.
Right, because we have a choice of where we want to focus our consciousness, what we want to take new. We went through the school system. Okay, what's next?
Well, again, getting back to densities, we're all pilots here on this great, spaceship Earth, and in order to work within the new density of reality, we have to be in accordance in our own physical merkabas and light bodies, be aware that we have to partake in that in a physical form, which means you take in as nutrition all of the light that's out there. You take in as nutrition all that is superluminal. It does not appear as light. It appears as small particulates that eventually make up the smallest matter of the periodic table, the pre-states of hydrogen and all of that. And we have to turn dark energy and dark matter into a superluminal new, heaven on earth, if that's the way you want to call it.
Right. And it's just to not even peel away what is heavier, just go on forward with your eminent, your character, your force of nature, which is our true spirit.
Well, it's all part about cycles again. And this is where we're headed, and every time there is a cycle, it's never exactly the same. It's kind of like the spiral dance. Every time we spiral around the same system again, it's always better than the last time.
And that's why we reach these different ages. Like the Vedic texts talk about the various ages, and we are, what age are we leaving now? We're going into the awakening phase, aren't we?
Well,
but we
the
have to go
the
through
equinox allows for
bridge.
The next 12,500 years to be, a very high cycle. So this actually becomes us stepping into the Silver Age, if you want to look at the Eastern way of looking at things, and into the Golden Age. And by the time we reach our polar star Vega out of Lyra, within the next 12, 13,000 years, we will be in the highest state again.
Well, don't you think we're going to get there quicker than that? I think that we're at a bridge stage place right now where we have to get over. I think it's going to be in my lifetime that we're going to experience something great.
We're here because we're issuing forth. We decided to be pilots for this particular age and generation. It's an ongoing thing. And you as an eternal soul will always be here. Time and space is just a measurement.
Right. And I'm not doubting that.
Feed you energy. If it's happened before that the energies feed civilizations and they go through the rise and the fall of these civilizations, and there is a period of de-evolution that goes into evolution. We witnessed that 6,000 years ago when we found Egypt in its highest state historically, and then it just began to de-evolve from that point to present time.
Okay, so how many cycles were in Egypt at this time? There's, like Rebecca was saying, there's different levels of statues there. And to my way of knowing, these statues represent, depending on how many chromosomes that particular race had, that's how high they become in height. So we have 42 plus 2 chromosomes, is it? Or
right
22.
Now,
we're at
right
22.
Now we have 23 pairs.
Yes.
46 chromosomes.
Right.
But we have the capability to take on that 24th chromosome because it's there. It's there in holographic form. It always has been.
Is that the one that was split off so we didn't become fully functional to our ability of knowing?
Well, it's hard to say what split it off. I just know that we fall into darkness and not receiving the light from the galactic center and the things of that nature, then, we're going to go through these de-evolution periods.
So Egypt was there during the 5 cycles of the Hopi, as the Hopi taught.
Yeah, but not
cycle.
As Egypt. Remember, Egypt.
It was as Kim, right?
Right. Egypt is a Greek word, Aegyptos. That's what they called the land of the vulture. And everything is symbolically represented in creatures, in their pantheon of gods and goddesses to have, different names that are animal, and they actually, we're talking about Horus, Hawkhead, or the different Sekhmet and the Cathead, or the Hathors, or, the different pantheon of star-seeded connections there. And during every time period in the ancient alchemia, where the word chemistry and alchemy came from, was all about taking the flesh and re-immersing it into spirit. That's what alchemy, the true alchemy, really is all about. Or you mean
the spirit into the flesh?
Both. You have to have, it going both ways.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
It's not about turning base metals into gold.
Right. It's about your transformation process.
Right.
And several yogis and prophets and people have come here telling us about that. And it seems like that is the information that's been hidden from us. William Henry has a great log of information of different frescoes and paintings and different icons that really show part of the picture that perhaps that's where the Masons started with that information, with the illumined ones. But maybe somebody provocateured that group and changed it into more of a controlling or more of a controlling atmosphere. But I think the information that they have was keeping secret for that fact, so they can not allow us to become all we could be.
Yeah, and from most of our written history, if you go back 2,000 years around the time of Christ, there's been major cults formed back then that were keeping most of the information to themselves. And what they did not like was the Gnostics that wanted to give it to everyone. And the Gnostics, the side branch of that would be the Essenes that went around preaching, and that's, you're talking about, Jesus, Yeshua ben Joseph, actually, coming from that mindset after going through the many mystery schools, wanting to be the deliverer of the word of God, which meant that God is within you, the kingdom of heaven are within. And, it's up to every one of us to become self-enlightened.
Well, it has also about the word logos. Logos means harmonic ratio in Greek. And if we look at, the different Gnostics' ideas about the music scale, they went into detail about do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And to explain the different harmonies of the sounds and what creates within our structure of our whole sound chamber inside our body, which basically we do become conscious of things at different resonating fields.
Yeah, what's interesting, though, is that modern music, unfortunately, had taken music and created, it into these proportions which are not harmonically valued to the system of our own particular chakra system. Well, let's just say 440 is your A. If you were to flatten the A down to 432, then the rest of the division of the octave is now whole numbers and very much in a harmonic, situation with the rest of your chakra fields. And so the Pythagorean scale has some of these notes sharpened and flat so that, these systems of music, like the solfeggio system, that's another system, is more conducive to the harmonic values of the light emanating from our chakra systems. Not as we see
So is
modern
solfeggio
standards.
based on the octave of 8, or is it more of a pentatonic? It's more of a flowing...
It's not even... Pentatonic scales are just, a way to create like the circle of fifths and that sort of thing. What I'm saying is a division. The proportional division from one note to the next does not have to be even tempered. Nor is the division of the colors of the rainbow even tempered. They're all slightly building upon each other in harmonic waves based upon whatever frequency each color is divided when it's absorbed into a gemstone such as a prism that would refract light. Light has the ability to be absorbed, refracted, or reflected. And the way you divide it is, we have built such sciences that go into radio telescopes and based upon spectrum analysis.
Well, yeah, this is interesting because the sun has different shades of light upon us as the human species when we go throughout our day. That's why they say you eat a full meal at 12 noon and the sun can help digest you because it's at the highest point of its fraction of light. So as it goes down in the morning, that's why we're sleepy in the morning, maybe sleepy at night. But yeah, those cycles can change for individuals, and we do get on different time clocks. That's what makes the world go round.
Well, our systems are all based upon what we call circadian rhythms. it's often been stated, like by rhythm charts, your mental energy comes from the vibrations of the orbit of Mercury. Your emotional body comes from the vibrations of the orbit of Venus, as well as the lunar vibrations coming. And your physical vibration is coming from the orbits of Mars. Now, they're like music of the spheres. It's out there dialing all this energy around the sun, and we are immersed in those orbits surrounding us. They're the closest planets to Earth. And our whole system of how we created our genetic code was based upon these vibrations instilling their imprint upon us from, the time that we are in conception to the 49th day when we actually decide to inhabit the physical fetus, to the time of our birth. And we actually have, the real time of birth is like going back to the time of inception and counting forward 49 days from that. That's when you decided to take on the physical body.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it really says we did come from somewhere unknown, like consciousness predates the body. And that is a fact, that brings to mind when you were talking. Did you see that little baby that was born? I can't remember where it was born, but this child that was born from a woman, it wasn't even born yet, and the doctor's standing there ready to accept the child, and the baby sticks his hand out and grabs the doctor's finger. I said to my dad,
he couldn't wait to be born.
Oh, that is a high consciousness baby. I mean, it's not even out of the womb, and it's already saying, I want to hold you. I want to touch you.
That was
what
during a cesarean, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was. Or maybe she didn't want the cesarean, and she says, no, don't do that.
Well,
Who knows? But that baby was conscious. It had something to say.
It's a less traumatic birth for a baby.
It was using its hand. That's amazing for a baby not even born to use its hand. So I will always be amazed about that. And showing really that the DNA coming into our planet today that's actually alive and aware and conscious is probably far more than it ever has been on the planet ever. And this is a point in time that we've evolved to as humanity, and we should all be proud that we're here. We get stuck in the drama and all the stuff that, we have to go through just to be here. But soon I think it's going to be an easier ride after everyone gets on the same page and people start releasing things that they need to release, and we can make a better world of it.
Well, one point not to forget is that this physical vehicle is not all that we ever have been. We have been through every aspect of, and it shows in our brain, of, we've been aquatic. We've been, mammalian, reptilian, all the way back to the first origin of, maybe we were troglodytes, We contain that genetic code as well. All part of us.
If you look at things under a microscope at the first forming of mitosis, of the splitting of the cell, everything looks the same. Mm-hmm. Everything. And it's interesting how those cellular structures have different information to grow a different being. So yes, we do have similar traits, and we probably all came from the same molecular material, but we're formed in different ways.
Well, consciousness inhabiting each physical vehicle has a lot to do with the direction that one gets taken in. Yes. If you look at the mammals on this planet, I mean, us being mammalian right now, and even if you go back to the historical, evolution from amphibian, reptilian, mammalian, and us going into our angelic brainstem, we're not more than, 4 small differences in our chromosomes that makes us and separates us from even the other simians, hominids here on the planet.
Well, this is Breaking Through to Truth with Dawnjah and Chelsia, and we're talking today about walking into a new world, basically. So here we are, walking into an unknown but maybe predictable world. But the one thing that makes us different than this cycle as compared to the last cycle is our awareness and our ability to hold more information in our cerebral cortex and perhaps take this information to wherever we walk or wherever we may change into. So being able to adapt is one of the prerequisites, so to speak. But the more we know, the more we could put into a package of options, of choices. So being aware is probably number one thing, and we are talking to the choir here at Revolution Radio because everyone seems to have an awareness that is extraordinary. The chats are great. Come to freedomslips.com and join the chat, and you'll always find something to talk about, even on a level that you don't necessarily have to see the person face to face. It's the virtual world and how we all learn and connect, and we're connecting in many different ways now as we move forward into a newer space, in fact. So maybe the physical world will start meeting the virtual world. And I think when that starts happening, then that's when we start putting things down in the grid. Like, for example, I'm going to be meeting Angela Black, another host that I've never met before. I've met her first on the virtual world. And so I will be meeting her in the physical world. So I always think that that's a crossover point. So that's a very important link to making something more substantial, more in the material, so to speak. So I think that's the kind of game we play on. You know, we figure out the unseen world, and you play by whatever your heart dictates as a direction. And then you are able to bring that information into a playing field where the mind can actually put it together in a cohesive link up with other people that know what's going on many levels. We have Dr. Mem Jin that always comes in and really gives us a lot of wisdom about health in the body and stem cell research, and all usable information for if we ever are individuals and we don't need the system any longer to work with us to make our lives fruitful, happy, healthy, and ways to kill disease with the way Tesla did. So, like, you have chemistry, you have people in the new world that I see. There's going to be a community with people that have the science background, people that have the know-how building background, and people that are the builders, the welders, the makers, and then the nurturers. And you have all these people in one place, and they create a place. Well, then these places branch out, and it does, something like the Amish did. They, really set a foundation on how you could perhaps work in this world and that world together. So they were kind of the mirror back in history. But now we know that they're being told to do things that goes contradictory to what their belief system is. So there are many tangents out there, many people who see certain pathways this world should go in. And there's other people that really know what the truth is and what honors everybody involved. Or at least you try. So you bend, but everyone has to know their bending point and what you want to focus on and what you want to give your energy to and what you want to concentrate on as values for your life and the future of maybe your children. I think people that have children, have big decisions. Right. I am sometimes very happy that I'm not, I was going to say a child owner.
A mother.
A mother. No, but really, I am very nurturing. So I would be a good mother, but that's why, maybe a classroom would be better than just
it's scary to be a parent
one.
these
Yeah,
days.
you got to make heavy decisions like vaccination or not vaccination, that school or that school, that teacher or that teacher, this environment, that environment. That is really weighs heavy on my spirit because it's the energy of the environment that really pays a toll on me if I allow it. And that's what I've been learning in this life to, be strong and also misinterpreted. I find that many people misinterpret me, which, I don't know how else to explain it except maybe write a book. But, that's why there's many languages out there and it's hard to understand where people come from, but really, I think if you understand love, I know that sounds cliche-ish, and there's many definitions of love, but there's like a well-being love, and that's good. And everyone should be letting that flow from their heart because that does change things. There's many people here on the planet that could feel things, and that's a different language than actually communicating in or discussion or using verbose words or long sentences, Everybody has language. So, interpreting the language here on the planet, there's many languages. And I kind of looked at languages as being music. They all tell a song. They all have a rhythm to it, a cadence, an open heart feeling to it. Like when I was in Italy, The open heart was so amazing. I never knew that there was people around in the world that had such an open, flowing heart. And I found the same with Australians. And now I'm putting people together in my own perception of a bubble, you know. But there are some great places out there where you can really open your heart and learn. Like the rainforest is another one that did it for me. Just like, wow, when I think of that and how much fruit it offers a different taste on every tree there is. With like, you can get something that tastes like candied yams, or you can get coconut cream pie, and you can get a rose tasting lychee at every tree there is. And then you can have a coconut to top that off. And when you're really hungry and you eat stuff like that, it's so delightful. And you can't explain that. You can't experience it anywhere else.
I think it's about being back to the garden, you know?
Well, yeah, we should be playing that song. Because it's true, you know, that's what that hippie movement brought to. And you know what? I was on the tip end of that. And I'm so thankful that I got an opportunity to do that. You know, because the Grateful Dead were really great teachers on how to let go and just dance. I mean, I was in a line at a phone booth, and there was this crowd right in front of me that were dancing around in a circle, having fun with the music. And no one takes time to do that. So I started doing it with them, and I had the most amazing time. But anyways, it's allowing that free spirit to just fly without worrying about, you know, what somebody's going to say about it. If it's in the best interest of everyone involved in the whole experience. But anyways, that's why, you know, so we're here walking a path that may be predictable and maybe not, you know, depending on what humans do to get back on track and decide what's important to them. I think that's where we could start.
Well, it's all about choosing yourself to be of service more than anything.
Yeah, and how you lock that into the certain cycle that you are experiencing.
Yeah, well, I look back at, you know, hippie movement. Mm-hmm. You know, all things were occurring. There was a lot of mind expansion based upon, you know, dimethyltryptophan and different stimulation through psychedelic drugs. And that did open up people quite a bit. But there was also a lot of hedonism. And there was a lot of hippie turned yuppie that, unfortunately, you know, they gave up and they had to.
Well, you know, maybe they had fear or, you know, a particular.
Well, it's about living. You know, unfortunately, you have to get the whole population to be really on the same page.
Well, you know what? I think the same page can go through music. Music is a way of opening people's hearts. It really does have a language of its own because each person can enjoy it in different ways. You can enjoy it harmonically, mathematically.
Yeah, or, you don't need the Tower of Babel to...
yeah, or style of playing. Style of playing really comes into it, especially if you're an artist view of playing, you know, guitar. Classical guitar is one that really flows, or Spanish guitar that flows. But being able to flow is how we're going to move through all of this.
Well, to me, music is just a vehicle for your intentions. And so your intentions are the other vibration that gets put into the songs you create, and that's what gets put out there. So if it strikes an emotional chord, it's because you're on the same page with that particular artist.
Well, it's interesting how you could put an emotion inside music. So you know what a person's feeling, you know, when they create something. And then the words on top of that, along with the theme, it really moves you. I mean, Jimi Hendrix music, his guitar playing really was fantastic. You know, I never got to hear him live, but...
He never played the same thing twice. He took a Stratocaster,
to me, that's spirit,
and turned it upside down and created his own chords and own style of playing that nobody else ever did. So, you know, that's a real pioneer when it comes to music, you know, and it all came from his soul. All of it did.
It truly did. You could tell from the emotion that it displays, the emotion it brings. And, you know, I think that's how we here on the planet, can clear our own selves through emotional vibrations, you know. Just letting go and just play music is a great way to do that because everybody's communicating but without words. That's like without misinterpretations.
Well, you know, getting back to the music of the late 60s, early 70s, is when electric guitar started really being the dominant feature in most of the musical groups. And for me, noticing the bending of the strings as it moved sharp or flat within the note, it was actually striking the real harmonic value of that note by not being dead on. Because like I said, the diatonic scale, the even-tempered scale, has very little to do with the functions of our auric field and our chakra system.
Well, then I would look at you as experiencing this life between major notes. You, like Mozart, find that dissonance is a necessity or a joy to have in music. And basically it is, because it's a polarity that works with itself, and then it goes back together into another field of feeling, and you can bring it up to the major note. So there are different shades of color that you could play with a bending string.
Well, I don't even call it dissonant. I call it finding the mark.
Well, you could do that too.
Yeah, because that's exactly what it's doing.
That's
it's
what
finding
it is.
the true note when you bend and make it sharpened or flat.
Right.
Because the real scale is not diatonic. There is a proportion that's mathematically perfect. It has nothing to do with an even-tempered scale.
Okay.
It has to do with proportion and how you dissect the octave. And
right. And I feel that that's what harmonies do. That is where, also, that's what the new light coming in is. The harmonies that are out there on these fields, as you were saying, the fields of resonance. And we can tap into that. Well, if everyone meditated at the same time, same part of the day, every day at sundown, wherever their particular sundown is, it would be like a little ringing of the bell at each little place where a person can just, put a mark on the whole solar rotation of the planet, wherever that mark is. And, everything means something. So there's some people that could see that sort of thing. And that's the connection. Everyone has a different way of perceiving and interpreting this world. And that's why it's so good to learn from everyone, because they all have different perspectives. And some perspectives were just recently put into the language of understanding, like using words. So some people have to take what is understood in a feeling way and put it into words on many levels. So that's why we hope to get guests on in the future that can really bring out their intuitive and their expertise in the way of seeing the world. And also, with all of our listeners and everyone on the chat, we will also have a great way of expanding. So we're looking to make changes, because changes are always a good way to keep on moving forward. And with a website and some communication skills and various organization skills, we're going to see if we can do like the biggest experiment in the world. And that's all up to us. So the future is still unknown, but still, I don't want to say pavable, because that sounds like it's not liquid or flexible enough. So we'll have to think of a word to fill in the gap of what that actually means in layman's terms. But whatever you think, we are in, and if you're in a higher state of consciousness when you think these things, I truly feel that we tap into grids, and emotional states are the way of connecting to this. So whatever you think when you're in a high state of consciousness, you can manifest that immediately. It is possible. And we just have to remember the tools, and, because sometimes you don't always take notes when you're in those fields of explanation. And to get those rules down in the rule book so it can be, replicated like the scientific method. The scientific method is one that does repeat it. But, we're also using tools that are in the unseen world that people learn through birth, by feeling, by knowing and realizing. Stuff you can't write down. You can't prove that. You just have to live it and know it. And then know that you are communicating on many levels. So that's why we're going to bring on different ways of seeing things and
create a new perceptual bubble. Well, that's one way of saying it. But, to honor everyone out there. Everyone is at a different stage of evolution. Everyone has a different capacity for understanding some of the most arcane or mundane information on the planet. So it's a matter of those that have a capability to be leaders, to pioneer consciousness grids so that the rest can use that as nutrition for their soul. And believe me, strong, powerful thoughts that are true and immutable can fuel this whole consciousness grid into the upliftment of man, because that's where the energy of the planet during this new cycle is all about. And we're increasing in light.
Well, and I believe that time is definitely conditioned by one's awareness to it. So our very awareness and the changes we go through, that's how, like, the different consciousness surges that are happening right now, I feel, because I could tap into various ways of seeing and thinking. So we all may realize that we are experiencing a consciousness surge, like a surge of energy. Like, there's so much information on YouTube and everything about many avenues of thought, and so much information and points of focus. So there could be said that there's many cycles of time which could be conditioned by one's own perception of that. But time is definitely conditioned by our awareness to it. So therefore, consciousness has fluctuations.
Well, yeah,
and for incoming and outgoing.
Time is reference to your ability to perceive it. And, time doesn't move. We move through it. So our ability to move through the timeline, is the one that we perceive to be the timeline we think we're on.
So that's why it would be very good. I hope we have gatherings in the future. That's my vision, that we all can get together and put a Revolution Radio gathering on. I don't know if that would be centered around speakers or different bands that play, or maybe both. But there is a lot we can all learn to gather in a facility or just a field. Just set up some generators and see how far it goes. That would be really fun.
Well, this past year, you and I have both partaken in gatherings of a sort with our Star Knowledge greater family out there. And, Chief Golden Light Eagle does a great job of bringing people together with particular themes. And,
we have the freedom to express ourselves, I think. You just got to be, you go to the chief and ask and do the right thing. And it's all, a learning experience of what the potential is. When we were there, I saw much potential that was untapped. And I need to start working on things now to get that potential more in the manifested field of maybe a production. But, I don't want to, take the cap off yet or anything,
Let the genie out of the bottle?
Yeah, let the genie out of the bottle. I might tell something. Okay, so you might not be able to control something. Anyways, gatherings might be in the future, and, we hope to make something happen for the future to follow in, some kind of a way of making it through. Maybe like the gypsies did. They were a transverse culture within a structure. I mean, the Aborigines are too. They have a different mode of doing, mode of living and believing. And it's just so interesting. Now, I popped that open. So, but I can't go down that rabbit hole because we won't have enough time. But just how different conscious states of awareness has been here on the planet, and we learned many different things from them. I mean, many people learn from the plant kingdom as it goes along. And, how sensitive the plants are. That's how I learned from them.
Well, take, for instance, whenever there is an event such as an earthquake or tsunami or things of that nature, the animal kingdom is in concert with each other to warn each other, and they know how to get out of harm's way.
So what do you think about that dream that we both had? Do you think that that's significant? I don't know what to think about it, really.
Well, all I know is that my dream was about releasing of the physical things that I think that will save me, and know already the outcome. And the outcome is, if you choose to be, alive in a state of well-being through any cataclysmic or earth change that's out there, then you will.
Okay, so then I saw it as the same, because I survived that tidal wave in my dream, and you were the driver, and I was holding your cat, and then I just reached over and held your hand, and I'm talking through the whole thing, the car's filling up with water, everything. And it was very interesting how it just all ended up that we were in a garage, and we transversed something. And I walked out and found that all these people didn't experience what we experienced, but I knew that in the end, it doesn't matter. You will survive. It's,
and for me,
gone.
I was more concerned about my animals, not about anything else. Make
yeah,
sure
so
that we're
everything
okay.
works out because there could be realities that you can't even interpret, but you don't need it. You don't just keep on thinking, wow, or being in gratitude. Well, I don't know. We don't know what the future brings, but we could just see the pathway that you could possibly take with your choices and all. But then you can't fill up your coffers with too much information.
Well,
I think going within would be,
basically everything that you learn that's data, this knowledge, so to speak, is not wisdom unless you can utilize it to some degree as experience. So,
Right.
then that you never can fill up your coffers. There's so much wisdom out there for the human experience to take on.
Be like a child. Keep asking, keep wondering, and keep reading, and keep reading. That's for sure.
Well, there's different ways to take in information. Sometimes I like to sleep on a book.
Right. Well.
Yeah. And ask the essence of the writer to speak to me. And, then you get the writer's thoughts. And then I can have a conversation on a whole different astral level as to how the real meaning is hidden in most of the symbolic words that are written on paper. And often everything, including every piece of important manuscript on the planet, there's a symbolic representation at all different levels for, all the way from the mundane to the arcane, for the initiate, for, beyond the initiation.
But basically, everyone wants to be entertained. That's the bottom line with many things. So, you can entertain yourself with the tools that you learn to work with.
I don't know if entertain's the word for me. Stimulation would be better.
Well, yeah, I
want to
can
be
understand
stimulated by different modads, of creation, write a song, paint a picture.
I think that's great. I see that.